Just a sec. So just for a test, can everybody hear me? We're good? All right, awesome. I see one more person coming in, and so we'll give them time, but just to reiterate, what I did do is I did pass out a few slides, so you have copies just in case what we show up here is hard to read. If others come, I ask maybe if you just share with them and help them understand, allow them to maybe see copies of this so that they have the ability to look at the data that we want to present in the event that they have questions on it or it's hard to read. I'm fine. Lights on, lights off. It's fine with me. You can leave it on, Dan. It's fine. Yep. Okay, great. Okay, so just to start off with, my name is Lance Olson, for those that may not know who I am. I am the treasurer for Trinity Lutheran Church. I sit on the church council. And what the church council wanted to do this summer is take a moment to address the congregation in what I would call, or what we are referring to as, an informational meeting. And that's what this is. This is not an official congregational meeting. We're not putting anything up to vote. We're not trying to set direction of the congregation. What we want to do is, there was a list of items that we'll cover here on the agenda that we wanted to cover with the congregation and kind of bring you up to speed with where we are with things. So yeah, Ron, thank you. So, all right, small font, apologize. We'll get better at this as we go on. But a couple of the things that we wanted to do is we want to give you a financial update of where we are, right? Kind of look at our income versus our expenses. We then want to touch on some models. So as we go through our financial update, it's going to become clear that the challenges that we had brought up during our annual meeting, they're kind of upon us now, right? And those challenges being like we have the school, the SCC rent is now over with, right? And so now we're working to keep up with that loss of income, right? And so we're going to kind of look at that, kind of give you an understanding of where we sit there. Then we're going to walk through just a couple of models of different ideas of how we can try to overcome this. And by the way, they are just some very simple models. You have them in front of you. They are there to be thought-provoking. Not necessarily, again, we're not saying we are doing this, right? By no means are we doing any of this. This is just ideas, and we welcome other feedback and input and ideas as we go through this. We'll then talk about basement space, right? We have a basement that right now isn't being utilized, and so kind of talk through with this group what it is that the council has talked about, and then again, looking for the congregation to also provide feedback and input as to other ideas of what we can do with that space. And then we want to talk about the future of Trinity, right? We've got a call committee. They're working very hard, and we're looking for a new pastor. And we want to just kind of give a brief update of what that looks like right now, kind of where we see things as we've worked through that process up to this point. And then just have a conversation about what people here envision, what they want to see as we move forward. And then the last topic is Heartland Days. So we're bringing everybody together here. We have our town celebration coming up, a great opportunity to promote the church. We've done some really neat things in the past, and so we're looking to bring forward and get an understanding of what people think may have worked in the past well, maybe other ideas, and then also talk about maybe even getting back into the rhythm of getting a parade or a unit in the parade to help promote Trinity, help promote the offerings that we have for the community. So that's what we want to cover today. Any questions before we jump into it? Okay. All right. So let's look at income and expenses. For those, if it's hard to read, that would be this first page here. You have charts. There are lots of different ways to look at the numbers, right? You can do a lot of different things with numbers, and I tried to keep it as simple as possible. So what you're looking at is my interpretation of giving a grounded understanding of where we're at this point in time. So If you look at the far, let's see, on your side would be the far left over here. What I tried to do is just really general over the last four months, because that's our fiscal year, right? Our fiscal year started February, so February, March, April, May. We're in June right now, so June is not completed. But February, March, April, May, you'll see by month kind of where our expenses go. And I would tell you it's not necessarily a very telling graph, other than the fact that our expenses and our income fluctuate from month to month, right? There's not a lot of predictability in it, right? And so it gets to be a little bit of a challenge as you're a council, as you're a congregation, to try to manage this from month to month. But I believe up to this point, we've done a very good job of doing that. But nothing more than kind of just drawing the picture that as you look at that chart, going from one month to the other, you might have a good month of income versus your expenses, but then the very next month it can flip-flop the other way, right? And so what I try to do then is to maybe point it out how we've progressed throughout the year. So what you see on this chart here is you have an additive look on it, right? So we just continue you see the expenses and the income grow each month. So when you get to this month here, when you get to the month of May, you're looking at the totals, right? And roughly we're showing, totals of, we're showing that we have in total more expenses than we have income at this point in time by about $2,000, right? So to net it out, up to this point, right now, we're probably running about $2,000 in the red. It might be $2,100 or so in the red. That's not terrible. That's nothing new than what we have experienced in the past, right? We kind of fluctuate back and forth. The concern now comes is that we have done that, and, okay, so now what you see is we have this $2,000 deficit right now, and from this point on, we are going to be seeing an additional $1,600 of reduced income. And our expenses aren't going down, right? So if everything stayed the same, you could take that $1,600 times 6, right? And you'd be up at $7,200. The math serves me right. Plus the $2,000. Now we're upwards closer of getting to be a $10,000 difference between expenses and income by the end of the year. Before I go on any further, does that make sense, or have I confused people? Okay, all right, good. I like thumbs up. All right, here we go. So what I want to point out is this is not something that we cannot overcome, but right now I want to bring forth kind of the reality of the situation. I don't even want to use the word the gravity, I want to use reality, right? We're up against this shortfall. We knew this was coming. We brought this up at the church council meeting. It's here upon us, right? We have no more rent money from SCC coming in. That equates to about $1,600 a month. And we are starting right now at that middle part of the year, $2,000 behind in our expenses or our income. So then to try to help put some further understanding of what it is that we need to try to accomplish, I try to just look at the first 4 months and say, oh, Ron, if you want to leave it just right there, that's perfect, that's fine. If you look at the first months, we averaged $14,968 worth of income every month, right? We brought in almost $15,000 of income. We had monthly expenses that were roughly about $15,500 a month, somewhere in there a little bit, right? That's kind of how the averages are working out. Now, if you take out the SCC rent, if we want to kind of look forward as to what the next 6 months will look like for the calendar year, you then have an average of about $13,300 in expenses or in income. So we're kind of that's kind of how that gap affects us when you look at it from an average perspective. So if you take into account, the projection of where we're going to be with where we're at right now with the 2,100, you take into account that kind of extrapolating out, because that isn't really necessarily changing either. And then you take into account these $1,600, and you say, what we need to do, and again, just generalizing, and I'm generalizing on the conservative side, meaning I'm rounding up on numbers, we need to generate about $16,000 of income to cover that $15,500 of rent. Okay? So I'm rounding up. So I'm just saying that in a conservative way because, again, our expenses and our income kind of fluctuate. But if we can average $16,000 a month, then we should be able to get through this, right? And so if you average an income of $16,000 a month, we're basically looking to find $2,700 additional dollars of income a month between now and the end of the year. Before I go any further, have I lost anybody there? Does anybody have questions? And don't be afraid to raise your hand, because I know it's easy for me to speak fast through this, and I apologize, so tell me to slow down. Tell me if you need me to repeat anything. How many good, what was that, Ron? Or Ron? I'm sorry, what? That's a good question, and one that I don't have an answer to at the moment. Rick, I don't know. I couldn't even guess, Rick, or I'd be wrong. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question. We can get that, though. That's a good point. Sure. Any other questions? That's great. I mean, it's a great question. I know, kind of where you're going there. And in the next slide, we'll kind of talk through that a little bit. But any other questions? Okay. Ryan, yeah, if you want to go. So then, you have ideas of what we can do to kind of come up with that 2,700, right? So if we say 2,700 is what we're after, and by the way, that means everybody continues to give the same way that they have, and now we're trying to find $2,700 a month more on top of that, right? That's our goal. As we look at that, I did nothing but pick two just ideas to model against. Again, I want to be so clear. We're not saying to do this. We're not saying we can do this, but these are just ideas and paths forward, and then I want to take pause to see if people have other ideas, because by all means, we're norming and storming, and we're just trying to, figure out our ways through this. But the way I try to do is I try to build out kind of where I come from, they call it burn down chart. How do we get to this $16,000, right? So this right here represents our goal. That's our $16,000. This number here, 13,300, that's that average monthly income that I talked about, less the school rent, right? So here's where we sit at 13,300. Here's where we sit at 1,600 or 16,000 that we want to get to. How do you do that, right? How do you paint that picture? And so in this first model, this is all about finding a renter, right? A renter for down in the basement. And that's, by the way, another topic that we'll cover, but this is the model for it, right? If we could find that renter, and if we could get a rental income of $1,600 a month, so there's the 16, then what that would equate to is that we would be looking to the congregation to increase monthly giving by $1,100. Or if you want to look at it down here, $1,600 a month in rent, and we would be having to put together a campaign to have everybody increase their giving by 7%. Okay, I think pretty simple, right? Find a renter, get that income back to where we need it, and then on top of that, we still have a call to action for us as a congregation to increase giving. Now, yes, so Rick's question was, I apologize, so thank you. Rick's question was, how many consistent giving units do we have in the church? And we need to find that out, correct? Yes. Fine. Yep. So then, again, a second model, nothing more than a model and an idea, right, is if we have an endowment fund. So we have two funds. Everybody talks about the endowment fund. What's the endowment fund? We have two funds. We have a fund that is for scholarships. So there's a scholarship fund, roughly about $209,000 in there. And then we have an endowment fund that has $132,000 in there, roughly. Okay, two separate funds. Both are managed by the endowment committee. And Mindy Bramberg, almost said Rudiger. I know, I bite my tongue. Mindy is our chair of the endowment committee board, so she is here with us tonight too. And so I had a quick conversation with Mindy because, again, nothing more than an idea. We're not saying that we have to do this. But if you looked at our monthly mortgage rate, which is $2,467, and you took that $2,467 out of the endowment fund to pay our mortgage, that would bring down our costs of what we're looking at. Then we would need, a very small increase in giving of about $233 a month from the congregation. Or if you want to look at it down here, if we took that money from the endowment, a monthly draw of $2,467, we would have to roughly increase our monthly giving by 1%. Okay? So, again, we wanted just to show a couple of ideas to kind of to bring to the attention of two things, really. One, there are different ways that we can overcome this, right? This is nothing more than just two ideas that were quickly thought of that we looked at. There's probably many more, right? Two, there's probably a good chance that no matter what we do to try to come up with this shortfall, to some degree, the burden will fall on the congregation to increase giving, right? I mean, simple. Everything's going up in costs, right? Like nothing is staying the same. Costs to run a church are not, staying the same, right? It's just fact of life. We've all lived through this, and we all are living through this today, right? So that is there, and it's something that we need to be, I guess I would say, aware and understanding of, right? It doesn't stop with the church. It's at your house, it's at your, your work, your job, and it comes into your, your religious family too. So those are kind of a couple of the models that, we wanted to bring forth. Try to get people to start thinking about this, what this might look like. It's action that we're going to need to take very quickly, right? This is, a real situation that we're faced with. Again, not something that can't be overcome, right? But it first starts with awareness, and that's what this is about right now. So, Dan. No. No, absolutely not. That's not what it's for right now. That would take work. That would take engaging members of whom who helped to set that up. That would take the committee to, look at approving that, and then that would also probably take a congregational vote. I mean, there's a lot of different calls, there's a lot of different, processes that we would need to follow before we'd ever even do that.
The question was, what is the endowment fund set up to do? Mm-hmm. And so that was the answer.
That is correct. Yep. Could we even do that? Yep. Can we use the endowment fund? And the answer is not without walking through the process appropriately. Another question. So the question is, how long could we take out of the endowment fund before it depletes? And it's a great question. The endowment fund has $132,000 in it, and I think our mortgage right now is at roughly about $150,000. So the endowment fund is not the end-all answer to it. What I would envision, and maybe I should have, spoke a little more in depth about that, is that it would be a short-term solution until we found other means to get that, to kind of recoup that money, right? Whether it's increased giving, whether it's a basement project or some other type of model, right? Something to kind of get us through, a year or two until we kind of, built out what we wanted to do with Trinity. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, that's a great question, and I didn't go in depth with that.
What is the endowment fund used for? Or does it just sit there?
Yep, yes. So, and Mindy, I'll let you correct me when I'm wrong, okay? Yeah, actually, you know what? I'm going to have Mindy speak to that.
Well, right, and I'm learning all of this as an endowment, part as well. So, yes, the scholarships, we've increased the amount of scholarships we've given, which we think is wonderful to take that money that Orville Owens left for us and give it back to the kids and their future in education, whether it be Trinity or agricultural. And then the endowment part of it is, you're right, we really don't have. We've talked in our meetings of like, oh, well, maybe we, give portions of it and we do a really big basket for the mental health night, or maybe we do it with the open house meal we've provided. But I feel like we have not really figured out or nailed down a way that we are consistently using that money. So I don't know, I guess I feel like as a congregation, we do a really great job of serving the community financially with some of the different fundraisers we've done. So maybe it is okay to use that money in a different way for hopefully a short period of time. So, is it true that it could be used for emergencies? It has been in the past, yes. Right? In the past, we had voted to use that money for the furnaces, right, Lance? Yep.
That is correct, yes.
Yeah.
Technically, yes, the interest of it, until you burn it down, there's some rules with it, but yes, there are pieces of the endowment fund that you can use for emergency purchases. And we could go through ad nauseum what the rules are, and we can have a sit down and probably go through that differently than here, because I'm not going to remember all the rules off the top of my head, but there are certain things that we have to abide by, and we have used them. For the HVAC systems, that's what they help pay for, and also we had the issue with Pastor Kim's salary that we used it for last year, so yes.
In 2 years' time, we have it under 100,000.
Yes, yeah, projecting, yep, that is correct. When we make our monthly payments of, $24.67, I think we're actually over 2,000 of it goes against principal. So there's a great deal of that payment, that monthly payment, that pays down the principal each month.
How many years do we have left on the mortgage?
So the question was, how many years do we have on the mortgage? Lance, you know the answer to that question, but it's in that room over there, so I don't recall off my head. I apologize. Was it 15 is left on it? Okay, there you go. 15. Yes?
Is the money in the endowment fund just came from Orville Owens, or what else?
Another thing we've talked about a lot
Yeah.
as a committee of what is this, and we need to educate people in what it is and how it is an option to give to. My understanding is it's kind of a place that people can donate to in whatever the situation, but people don't know about it. So I think that's something as a committee that we need to do better at and kind of just get the word out to. So.
So, like, if people, like, if you had a funeral here, sometimes it goes to the endowment.
If they call it out, yes. If they say the endowment fund, yes, it goes into the endowment fund.
Has to be designated to the endowment fund. So
I
really
believe-
that large sum of money came from Orville Owens
Correct.
years ago, and then with investing is where
Yep.
it has stayed at that.
So it's
amount.
true that both funds are from Owens
Yes.
family. Is that right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yep.
Which we talked about too, Lance, on the phone of, do we have ancestors of Orville Owens who, is this something that in a situation where you need to kind of ask permission, to use his money in that type of a way? Which that's, again, like you said, something we'd have to work on.
That's part of that process, right? When somebody asks, can we use this for it? Those are the types of things that we need to do to make sure that we're being prudent and responsible about that type of a decision. So, again, nothing that we can solve here, right? Nothing, but more just letting yourselves know about this situation and kind of what we're thinking. Yes.
Do we have a committee that is actively working on this? Trying to find a solution for income?
The committee would be the council, and so the council is looking at this, but right now, as we had our last council meeting, it was decided that this was our next step, right? Information, letting everybody here know. This is not going to be solved by the council, right? This is going to be solved by the congregation as a whole, right? And so right now it's about awareness and what we're working what we're working with at this point in time.
Nobody's been aware of it for quite a while, that we've been losing income.
Yep. Yes, we have. And so, yes, reality is upon us at this point in time, right?
So would it help if we offered, if there were people from the congregation that would actively work?
I think it would. I think we would want to make sure that if we put together that, we would have dedicated individuals that were really going to be passionate about doing it so that it didn't get forgotten about for, a couple of months. A lot of times people's intentions are very, very good, and there's a lot of energy at the beginning, and then after a month or so, it kind of fizzles out, and then people say, well, where is this, right? I experience that at work all the time. So we would just want to make sure that with a situation like this, that the people that we could get to commit would stay committed and kind of chair that through. I mean, it could be, as simple as, putting together a campaign, right? And just for the next month, really make a drive to make sure, beyond these calls. So we're going to have this same discussion on the 28th after church, right? 29th after church, I'm sorry, where we, have this same kind of a discussion and make sure that we're getting this information out to everybody. But then after that, a drive or a campaign could very well be something that we could use, right? And then maybe the model looks different. Maybe all of a sudden we realize we've got more garnered or support from the congregation, and we don't have to do anything like take an entire month's payment out of the endowment fund, or maybe we can get away with making something a little bit more palatable from a rental perspective. We don't have to charge $1,600, right? Like, there are different things we can do, but I think what we need to realize right now is we have to find a way to get from that $13,300 a month to $16,000, right? We need that $2,700 to really make sure that we're not coming back and having this conversation again in another 6 months type of thing. I believe the answer is yes. The last time I looked, it was somewhere around 7 or 8%. It's done actually quite well. 3.7. It's very low, respectively speaking, compared to rates now. People have brought up, like, could we do something where we refinanced and brought down that monthly payment? Things that we could look into. But yep. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is correct. Definitely a way to look at it, yes. So what Rick was saying is that the interest, if I have it right and the interest on the endowment is around 7 or 8%, then that's kind of getting after this 7% here when you're kind of looking at this rent. I mean, it would cover this. It would cover the monthly payments basically of the 2467, right? 2467, yeah. And we wouldn't be taking down the principal of the endowment fund. It all depends on how the interest fluctuates, right? Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. So, kind of talked through this quite a bit. I hope, the situation is not dire, but the situation is one that merits all of our attention, right? And I think we can obviously put this together. We're talking $2,700 a month. We as a congregation, to 1, 2, 3, a dozen of us, maybe that's a lot. I would say that's a lot, but to a congregation, it's probably, it's very manageable, right? So, 27 times 6, sure, 12, and then another 6. It's going to be more like 18 by the end of the year. Yep. $27 times 6. Oh, 16.2, yes, 16.2. Okay, yeah, you're right, I'm sorry, yep. I factored that into that 16, I factored that into that 27, so that's in there. But good point, so Ron was like, did we factor in the 2,000 we're behind already? And yes, the answer is yes, so. Okay, any other question, any other suggestions? Yes.
We did this a few years back, and I talked to you about this in the summer months.
Mm-hmm.
We had what we called a billboard, and bills were put up there on the board, and if anybody from the congregation wanted to pay that bill or a portion of it,
Yes.
and I think it was successful. How well or how much they got, I don't know. It's a small baby step, but that's sometimes pretty.
Yeah.
It's just, it worked, I think, at one time. I remember doing it once or twice.
I think I remember it. You and I talked about it, and I have forgotten it after I've been away for a while. But yes, so the idea was brought up about posting out in the fellowship area a billboard, literally a billboard where we paste our monthly bills. And if people wanted, you kind of put it they took an envelope. I think they took an envelope and then they paid part or all of it and they associated it to that bill type of thing.
I think they just need to check out to the church and turn it in.
Yes, yep. And so those are, that's a great idea too. I think we did that and if I remember, it was a long time ago, but we did things like janitorial supplies and kitchen supplies and things like that. And so, great. So that's a great idea, and you're right. It may seem like a small step, but small steps lead to big steps. One thing that we have to stress, though, we do things like that. It has to be above and beyond what people are currently giving, right? Like sometimes you see somebody's like, well, here's $10 for this effort, but now I'm going to reduce my monthly giving by $10. That doesn't help us if it becomes kind of a yin and a yang, right? It has to be additive over and above what we're doing. So I only bring that up just to let everybody know because sometimes we get into those situations too. But yeah, it's a very good idea. Sorry that I didn't remember that before.
Well, my,
So that is a fantastic question, Glenda. Glenda asked, what type of businesses are we looking for down in the basement? I'm going to hold off on that question until we get to the basement slide, and then we'll come back to that if that's okay. But it's a great question. Any other?
I just wanted to comment that if you do that billboard, I think that for your regular givers, most of your regular givers understand that that's above and beyond because you'll say that and they'll get that immediately. But it might encourage people who have no clue about the costs of what it takes for, the expenses of congregational life.
Yep.
It might educate some people who just have no clue about that. So
Yep.
it could be a very positive thing.
Good point. Yes. Yes.
Do you want me to talk into this because I have it? Okay. Is that something that a person can just go and do, or is that something that the council would have to like approve?
The billboard?
Yeah.
No,
To just do
council
it.
doesn't have to approve
I'm
that.
just all about like an action step type of a person, and I feel like it's a great idea, I think. Like, I think we just got to jump on it and let's
Somebody
do
can
it.
work with Cindy and I, and we can kind of give you an outlay of kind of like I would say maybe the more predominant monthly bills, the ones that are, like the electric bill, the city bill, right? All those ones that are out there that we know come in every month, and we can start listing those out there too.
Some of the most attractive things are things that you really rely on, like a new control panel. People are more energized by giving to that because they feel the need for that more than toilet paper.
Fair enough.
I feel like it's just eye-opening too, like just an eye-opening way to, for people that haven't thought about this or haven't been to this meeting or like, they're not at this point yet of like, we're in a pretty serious situation. I just feel like it's one simple way to open some eyes of this is a situation that we've got to figure out together. So.
Let's see, Dan? Oh, what? Mm-hmm. So that's going to solve a lot of problems. Okay, so let it. So. Okay. So the idea was thrown out is to investigate the land that the church owns, I think you said on the south side, right? Of the parking lot, to see if that, by chance, that was anything that would be palatable or doable to sell off for housing developments. And so that definitely something we could look at. Yeah, understood. Understood.
How do we get this information out to the people that don't come to church? I mean, those are the people we need to, they're kind of the future. We're all the older people, except for Mindy. I mean,
What I'm hearing is I'm one of the older people. That's beautiful. No.
you're older than 30.
There you go. So the answer is we'll be sending out this information too. These slide decks are going to go out, but it's great the more people that we can get to listen to this, because I think there's more of a story in between the slides than there is on the slides, right? But yes, we will be sending those out and letting people digest that information that way also.
I guess here was my idea that I could take on and work on. I feel like we even just need to reach outside of our walls. Like, we want to reach the whole St. Croix Central School District. And I think about with the float coming on, and I think about the technology world we live in, even like, not that I'm good at making videos, but just like little clips of videos of why do you love coming to Trinity? What is it that we offer here? We've talked as an endowment committee of like, hey, we're giving out $2,000 scholarships. Like, maybe that would attract some new families, things like that. And if we can just make a video that I'm saying out loud and I'm adding to my to-do list, and then we hand them all out. We hand them out to everybody at the parade, right? We can put a little QR code on there and we can put it into everybody's hands, and what happens, happens. But I just feel like we have a lot of value in what we do here, and I really enjoy bringing my family here, and I just want other people to know that, And we got to tell other people in order for them to give them a chance to buy into what we do.
Yep.
So I can do that if that's something that we want.
Joe's making note of all great ideas.
You can help me make that.
Okay. Any other questions about the kind of the financials, the raw financials? Okay. Think it's, like I said, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's a mounting problem, but it's not one that's insurmountable, right? Again, it just takes awareness, it takes action. That's what this is about, right? So, okay. All right, Ron, if you want to scroll down, what are we at next? Okay, basement space. Oh, Glenda, you had a question about basement space and what we were thinking about it. So, first off, if you look at the left-hand side, this was kind of what what we currently had with the school district, right? So 10-month contract, it was about $1,926 a month, roughly equates to $1,600 a month on a 12-month contract, right? So that did well. I do want to be very publicly appreciative of what the school gave us. We've had this for probably, Rick, the better part of 15 years since we put the addition on? It had to be, at least. Yeah. They were great. The school district was a great tenant. They kept everything up to date. They actually finished that basement off at their expense. That didn't come at Trinity's expense. So it's been a great asset, and one that, at some point in time, it was going to come to an end. It wasn't going to last forever, and so here we are at that time, right? So looking forward, we need to look into what we want to do with that space. It's a great space. It does have some limitations to it, especially when you're talking about rentals. I think one of the bigger concerns with the school is kind of like the lack of an official kitchen and prepping, right? And so they wanted to try to get into more of that, and we don't offer that. I don't think our kitchen here is even a kitchen that hits any type of state codes, right? We don't have the proper ventilation, things like that. So that's a challenge of the space down there, but not necessarily one that that would stop us from renting to somebody. So for instance, Glenda, now if I come to your point, we thought about we being the congregation have talked about looking for commercial rental. So it would serve a great purpose. It has two bathrooms, so, and it can be divided. But it has a great appeal for real estate or insurance office if somebody wanted to run that out of the basement. It's set up for a daycare. Again, the meal prep is challenging there. So today's daycares are usually all day long. And, they want to have a full service kitchen to kind of manage through all of that, those tasks. So we lack that part. But we also have thought about maybe having a Trinity run daycare there where we would run and kind of benefit from that. However, something that we also need to keep in mind when we think about a renter, a tenant, no matter who that tenant is the costs that are going to come up with that too, right? So when the school rented from us, we had very little cost that went with that. If we pull in a tenant, a new tenant, whether it's commercial, whether we decide to do something with it, we're definitely going to need to have some type of a committee formed that manages that, right? Because it's going to be a business, and it's going to be one that, we're going to need to make sure that we're supporting that tenant from keeping the basement, updated, meeting any types of needs that they, reasonable needs that they may ask us, right? We're going to have to make sure that we collect rent because the school paid beautifully every month on the day, so we never had to worry about that. But you get into a new tenant, and we might have to, manage those type of situations with a little bit more scrutiny. We'll probably need some degree of legal counsel, right? We're going to need to have a contract drawn up, make sure that it suffices for both the tenant and Trinity, so we protect ourselves. So we're going to have to work through some of that, and then also advertising, right? We got to get our name out there and let people know that space is out there and it is available. So those are just some additional costs, in this particular time where we're a little bit cost sensitive that we might have to incur. But if the end all result is we have a tenant that's on board, if we're able to, after our expenses are realized, we're able to net $1,400 to $1,600, which means, the tenant we're paying, probably north of $2,000 again, then we're in a position where, we're doing well for ourselves. But it's going to come with support from the congregation, and both, probably financially, but more, of somebody's time to manage this. Yes?
Did the amount paid by Super Simple, that monthly amount, did that include utilities and sewer?
Yeah, we did not charge them for utilities. It included it. So yes, you are. So the question was, did St. Croix Central's monthly rent include utilities? And the answer is yes, it did include utilities. Another idea that the congregation has had, but we haven't really found where we could do this, is sometimes there are agencies that'll rent out that space, and then they'll take care of all of those costs, right? The upkeep of that. You see a lot more of that on the residential housing market than you do necessarily for the commercial market. So we haven't really found anything from the commercial. There's a place in town here that we inquired to, and they weren't interested in helping us manage that because they're like, we just do residential housing, not necessarily commercial. But if we could find somebody that could do that, or an agency that would do that for us, then it becomes, I guess I would say, potentially easier to manage, right? They take care of the legal. They take care of the administration, right? They just charge the tenant and give us a cut of it. We might not make as much, but we don't have as much responsibility either. Yes?
So has the school been out long enough so that the bill that came, our water bill and et cetera, lights, did it go down, or hasn't it been empty long enough?
Yeah, no. Our I'm just going to call them utility bills, right? Our water, heat, sewer, electric, they've gone up slightly, and the school's been out since December. They have not, they were done in December, I think it was, right? I think, yeah, they haven't been here since then. So we really haven't seen any, I'm not going to say we haven't seen any cost savings, but I would tell you not significant enough that I would note paying the bill. But good question.
If we rent that out to somebody, do we have to worry about taxes if we rent it out to the wrong?
So if I believe, so the question is, if we rent it out to somebody, do we have to worry about taxes? I went and consulted my tax accountant and asked, my question was, as us being a nonprofit, do we have to be careful who we rent this out to because it could ruin our nonprofit status, or we could show profit? When I talked to him about how much we were charging, so we were charging $1,900 for 10 months, so let's just call it $20,000 a year, against income of about $210,000. He said it wasn't a significant amount, that it would not affect that status. He goes, if all of a sudden you rented that basement out and you were getting closer to 30-40% of your income was coming from that, then you'd probably have to start showing it as income and paying taxes on it, if that's the question that you had. Okay. So as long as we keep it under control. I'd love to have that problem, though. That would be a great problem to have to go figure out.
I guess I think we need to start with social media, right? Like, we just have got to blast this out everywhere. Get the word out. I think we all need to tell a couple people, and we talked at one point about even just telling a hand and build forward. I don't know, I guess I think we really need to get this.
It prob-
Informational, okay.
Yep.
Who could do that? I think we should maybe unlabel this church so that anyone can come. I don't know how you go about doing that,
Sure.
but being labeled in today's world, in the Catholic, it's the off-brand churches that are really,
Yeah.
That's because of the way they act, they use it there, and they're a whole different thing.
well, yeah, but we're all leaving, for me, personally, I leave it thinking that, I think they're really, for me, it's pretty simple. It keeps me grounded, and I think those other churches believe the same thing anyway. They may be teaching it differently, still teaching the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you could bring more people in because you're not labeled as something, well, at that point, you're not gonna make it, what's the difference? I mean, we're still gonna be believing in what we believe in.
Yeah, so what Rick is bringing up is the idea that affiliation to certain, just to a religion, right? Sometimes it appears, as we were coming through these newer times or the recent times, that maybe that's limiting at times, right? And so what was brought up is the fact that if you de-affiliate yourself and become more of just a unit of Christ and a free will church, that possibly that would generate more interest of people coming in rather than going to a Catholic church or going to a Lutheran church or going to a Methodist church or a Baptist church. So, it's a philosophical question. It's one that, I think that should be very open for the congregation to discuss, and it's something that we would probably have to call a congregational meeting to have that discussion, right, Rick? I mean, that we're talking about going in a different direction, and yeah, yep. So, definitely something that we can entertain and that we can look into, but by all means, it'd be something. That's a bolder strategy on setting the direction of the church. One that's, again, not a terrible idea, but it would definitely need a lot of discussion with the members of the congregation. So, good conversation.
I guess here's my thought, and I completely agree with this, but the thought popped in my head. I grew up in a Wells Synod, and I could be wrong, but I feel like a Wells Synod was even more strict or was very, yes, am I right in saying that? Okay. But I know my church that I grew up in right now, they are flourishing, and which is totally different than what I agree with you in saying, and these new things that are popping up and very, and I think it's the church I'm thinking of, my home church, they got these new pastors in, and it was just this whole new, I don't know. But right, I completely agree with you, but that did pop in my head of there's a strict in synod, and they, for some reason or something they're doing is working well. So add to more of the theory thought that we're thinking of. And we've talked it as an endowment committee too of just music. Is it something where we can just change and upbeat the music? Does that attract people? I'm no musical person, so this is not my area, but yeah. And those are probably conversations we're not having and figuring out tonight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is part of why we wanted to have it, right? We haven't had enough of these type of conversations or these gatherings where we bring people to candidly just talk about various topics, right, that are affecting our church, and we probably need to have these more often. So, very much welcome these type of comments and these ideas. There's no doubt about it. Just to keep on track, because watch died, so I guess it's still 6:30. But So any more questions on the basement space?
Can we share something social media?
Yeah. I would think,
I think let's get into Betty's Facebook thing. I think we gotta do it right away, like right now.
yep.
Right. Well, whatever that thing was that I had made a couple months ago, I guess if that is approved by people, I can get that to Betty and.
You know, the dimensions of the area, and
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
church's Facebook page.
Yeah.
Karen and I are kind of mad.
Perfect. I will get it to you guys.
Does anybody agree with me instead of calling the basement, can we call it lower level?
Yeah.
I-
Yes.
Basement sounds to me as dark and dingy.
Right. I was going to bring that up, to change the name to lower level rather than basement. It just sounds nicer.
You must have your degree in marketing. Yes. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah. So the other thought, just so it's on recording, is it was brought up remodeling it for a residential space to rent out. So again, something that we can look into, but yeah, fair. Yeah, right. Okay. Any other further discussion on this? Sorry. All right. Ron, do you want to move up? Okay. So we're already kind of in this. And Pastor Julie, this is where I was going to address this a little bit too, okay, on this slide. Okay. So, okay. Let me talk through this and then you'll come up. So the future of Trinity, right? So we already had some conversation. We've had it brought up, do you want to, do we want to change or look at what our affiliation is? But also, I think we have to look at our success rate, our lack of success rate with attracting candidates to Trinity. Right now, it hasn't been good, but, there's some larger factors that are beyond things that Trinity can fix that are affecting that, right? We have a small candidate pool that we're drawing from. There's fewer and fewer newer pastors coming out. We're not looking for a senior pastor of 10 years. We can't afford that, and Pastor Julie will go through that. But we just can't afford that based on our current budget. So for the pastors that we want, those newer pastors, maybe with a year of experience or two of experience, those are hard to come by at this point in time. And then there's a growing demand for the candidates also, right? So there are a few congregations here in the area that also have calls out for pastors that have not had any success up to this point. So it's kind of the perfect storm. Like if you were a pastor, it's the perfect storm for yourself, right? It's a great way. You'd have many opportunities to choose from. For a congregation such as ourselves, it's a little bit more challenging because we don't have as many suitors as we'd probably like. So there are options besides having a dedicated pastor. I'm sure many of you have been part of conversations or have heard people talk of conversations about partnering with another church. We partner right now with Gethsemane in Baldwin for all of our oh my gosh, I want to say catechism, but now I'm getting into my confirmation classes, sorry. So all of our confirmation classes are already we're already partnering with Gethsemane. And so Pastor Julie works with the pastor over there, and, we use our facilities sometimes, we use their facilities sometimes. They do services together, so it's worked out well. I think the kids seem to get it. I haven't heard of anything negative. We do a nice job of getting pizzas and things ready for them so that they're here, and they do the same when we go there. So we already have some of those relationships started out. Alabite probably smaller, but it could lead to, if we wanted, having a conversation just to see if there was interest to grow that relationship with Gethsemane. So that's an option too, and then that way we're not carrying the full burden of paying the full-time pastor. So definitely something that we'd want input, love input from people here tonight. Would want to continue to garner input is another option as opposed to having a dedicated pastor. Sure.
I asked if we might talk about this kind of thing as sharing ministry rather than partnering, because partnering sounds like you're going to make some sort of, that you have to be together for lots of different things. But there's lots of things that you can do with shared ministry, and that can include more than one partner in your I don't know, I'm losing my word. So I talked about shared ministry because I've worked with congregations before and brought together lots of partners, but then we had interest in doing various things. So we didn't necessarily have an agreement that we have to have the same pastor or anything like that, but we were able to share some resources and stuff like that. Right now we have a group that meets for text study, and it creates, I think, a kind of a strong collaboration between the pastors, and that's, with Pastor John over in Cross Lutheran in Roberts, and Pastor Paul at Gethsemane, and then myself. And we have a pastor from Menominee and stuff like that, and some that come from River Falls for our ELCA congregations. But there can be some ways, we have some things in similarity, that we try to work together. In the school district, we have SCC connection with Roberts. So there might be some ways in which we can share ministry in Roberts. I've been in places too before where we were able to do some things together, even with, say, the UCC church and stuff like that. It just depends on, what's going on at the time. Now, those are things that aren't going to maybe last for 10 years, but they're shorter term. So there's ways in which you can share ministry, I think, that can be for the short term and can build up the things that you value, okay? So I think it would be a good idea to have some conversation with those closest partners that we already have, that we're already doing some things with, or that are close to the school district that we share. And so I would encourage conversation between the councils of, say, Gethsemane, Trinity, and Cross, because we already have lots of things in common. And then we could talk about real ways in which you can maybe do some things in ministry. And it also can maybe be a staffing thing too, that you can share staff in some kind of way. So that can change your bottom line, all right? One of the things I wanted to put together for you was the cost of a first call pastor, so that you just had the idea of that and know where that is at. And so I created a spreadsheet for you of sorts. For 0 years of experience with a base salary, and then there's all the things that go into that cost. The one thing that is a variable is the cost of health insurance. And if you can see where that line is, there's a variable between $7,900 to $2,300 if you were to have your congregation fully fund the health insurance for a pastor. And you can see how much that changes the score, right? It could be from $80,800 to $96,700. Because they've had a way of taking care of their pastors, so it's a seamless change when you go from one congregation to another. You don't have to start over with insurance, and so it's a group, kind of a group policy type of thing. Yeah, it's probably not apples to apples, so. The church has done that for lots of years. I think they're looking at different changes though coming up in this fall, and I won't know exactly what that is until this fall. And so I think they are proposing something that will change that formula somewhat, but that's what it's been. Actually, when the ACA came into place, it reduced costs overall. For health insurance. That was one of those rare times when the cost of health insurance did go down. So the question was, why don't they use the open market? And it's just that they've been a group for lots of years. And then just to see what it means to go to 1 year of experience. When you go from 0 to 1 year of experience, when you go for a full change, you go up a year as well as an increase in cost. And so you can compare the base salary there. And again, the only thing I don't have for 2026 numbers is what the health insurance might cost for that year. So when I been talking with the Synod office, I said, in some ways, if you get a single person, if that's your candidate, ends up being your candidate, and that does happen, that's pretty affordable for you. So I said, please be thinking about that as a possibility for Trinity, because that's kind of in line with what you could afford, I think, very easily. Just in those kind of terms, just to think about that. But I really do think that it would be to your advantage to explore some conversation with your closest ELCA partners or neighbors here, namely Gethsemane and Trinity, to see if there's some ways that we could work together and share ministry. So that's my a little insert. Any questions to that? Oh, there was one other thing to say. I've been here not quite a year and a half. And 10 years ago, it was very common for me to be in a congregation at least that long as an interim. And I've done about a dozen or so interims, so I know that pretty well. And I just have to say that it's always a surprise when a candidate all of a sudden appears. Okay? And it's a good surprise. But we can never say, oh, it's never going to happen, because that's kind of the wrong thinking. So I think just don't give up hope on that, because it just does happen. And when you least expect it. So not a bad thing. But just hang in there. There are fewer candidates. Seminaries are downsizing and all those things, but the church is also changing. We have many small congregations in this synod, and all of them are not going to survive. So we just have to be nimble and figure out ways to survive, even for the short term. And so I think just to think of, you need to have your own pastor. May not be the only way to think about it too, okay, for all your needs. I don't know that that's the only way to think about it. So keep that in mind.
On that note, as call committee, I did talk to Pastor Randy just last week. I connected with him on the phone, and he just reassured me that they have not forgotten about us and that they're still looking. And he told me, yes, that the pool is very small, but to have those interview questions ready to go. So as a committee, we'll get those finalized, because as Pastor Julie said, we'll be ready whenever it pops up. So.
Any other comments? Okay. All right. So last topic is the I labeled it as having the Hammond Heartland Days float, but maybe an entry into the Hammond Heartland Days parade. We've done this in the past. Made sure that people in the community know who we are, where we are, where we stood. I think it's worked out well. We haven't done it recently, but congregation is, or the council wanted to make sure that we brought that up to these calls or these sessions, just to to put the idea in you that we would like to do that, or that could be a possibility to help promote us. But again, we're going to need volunteers, right, to help with that. And make sure that we have it properly staffed. And by the way, a float doesn't have to be like a total float. It can be just, it's been members walking down the street with kazoos, I believe. Right, Rose? All right, no kazoos. Yes. Yeah. There we go. Oh, it might have even been bikes. Yeah, that's right, biking. So the whole point is, it doesn't have to be like a hay wagon going down the parade, right? Right. But again, we're looking for members that would be interested in helping to drive this initiative, right? So I'm bringing this up here. Joe, when do we have to have entries in by?
Literally the day before.
So we have the right person here that can help us with an in to the parade, right? So, right now, again, nothing more than I want to bring this up to the congregation, to the members here tonight. Probably want to start revisiting this. You might see some questionnaires or some messages in the bulletin as we move through here this summer to see who would be interested and who would be available to support something like that. So nothing more than just starting to get that idea in people's heads also.
And also hoping that last year we looked at that, the holidays was the Friday evening holidays. We'll be looking for help again with that. Just to work the loadings and stuff for the days, the next year.
Lance,
Yes.
if I remember right, you have a big banner that says Trinity Lutheran Church.
Oh, we do?
Check with Sue on that.
Okay.
I want to say, didn't we have that first year Pastor Rose was here? Yeah, we had it.
So Joe, you're going to make a note of that? Thank you. So the note or the comment was there's a banner with Trinity Lutheran that we could maybe find and use. Right. Yep.
Do I want to be in charge?
No,
No.
understood. Hey, we start with ideas and we'll worry about manpower. Love it. Yes. Yes. So, okay. So I do have one question. We can't take a vote or anything, but what I do need to know, like what we covered here tonight. Helpful, not helpful, more confusing? Are you like, what I'm looking for comments? Is there something else that you would like to see?
Maybe you should rent the basement out to a senior citizen without them, they won't have to make steps.
Love it. Okay. All right. There's really nothing here to adjourn. This was, again, just an informational meeting. So that kind of ends our agenda, ends our topics. If you have further questions that you want to ask afterwards, feel free to come up and ask. Otherwise, the June 29th session will be a lot like this. So please, 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 if people ask you that you thought that this, what you thought about this, tell them, be honest, but then also make sure that, if you thought it was good, make sure you promote it, because we'd like to have even more people here for that discussion on the 29th. Okay? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. All right.